Hi, friends. We're back. It's Annie
and Andrea.
We are the co-owners of 108 Meditate, a spirituality and wellness company that offers up products, practices, events, and even certifications to help you on your spiritual journey. So today we're going to be talking to Andrea about her energy work story. We shared mine already. We've already done the interview for it. And now we want to hear about how you got into energy work. Basically, just tell us your story.
Okay. So this was probably 2013 or so. Now, I had my son in 2009, and his birth was traumatic. I had some issues with my hips, and at the same time was having some family issues. I didn't know at the time that your family is connected with your hips. And that might sound like weird to people, like, wait, what do you mean they're connected? But energetically, this is where we create life. This is where we grow life, and this is where we deliver a new life.
Well, and it's your root chakra,
it's
right?
Your roots.
Yes.
So it's not only like you creating future generations, it's also where you came from and your history, right? So anyway, I had a lot of hip pain with him. My pelvis actually just ripped in half down the middle. So this little strip of cartilage that holds your pubic symphysis together just tore. And
that sounds so painful.
It was incredibly painful. I couldn't walk. I left the hospital with a walker so I could walk and a girdle tied around my hips, like really high compression, belly button down to my thighs.
And how old were you?
26.
So you're 26 years old with a walker.
Yeah.
Wow.
Walker, a 1-year-old, and a newborn.
Oh my goodness.
So, thankfully, luckily, my husband was off for the season. He did seasonal work. So he was home with me and I had his support, but I didn't have the support of family close by. We lived in southern Utah. We were 3+ hours from the nearest family member, and we didn't have a lot of people who could just drop everything in their life and come down and be part of our life. So I felt very much on my own. Anyway, fast forward 3-4 years, I'm still experiencing hip pain. And it was excruciating. It was enough to really debilitate my daily living. I couldn't stand and do the dishes.
Wow.
I couldn't vacuum my house. We went to Disneyland once, and just standing in lines, I was in tears, just sobbing because I was in so much pain. It was miserable for me. And it was just the littlest things. And, I'd like open a heavy door and my hips would shear or flare or rotate. And I was in physical therapy every week. And they're like, it moved in a different way. Like, it wasn't even consistent moving. It was just unstable, period.
Wow.
So, in your story, you talked about you were kind of in a place of desperation, right? Like I think everybody sort of has to hit their own rock bottom before they're willing and open to new alternative healing holistic approaches, when you're like, okay, nothing else has worked. Now I'm going to try this. So
true.
Yeah, because otherwise you're like, well, maybe this will work. Maybe that'll work. So I was definitely at rock bottom. I was in excruciating pain, and chronic pain just makes you miserable. So I'm sure I was depressed on top of everything else. And I remember exhausting all physical resources, like all logical things that could have helped me. I was like, none of this is working. And no one had any answers too, which was very frustrating because physically you go to the doctor and they're like, you're fine.
Yeah.
In quotes, right? And I'm like, I'm not fine. I can't stand and do a load of dishes. That's not normal for someone in their late 20s.
No.
And then on the other side of it, I wanted to have another baby. I knew she was waiting for us. I experienced her being in the delivery room with the birth of my son. So I was like, I know she's there. I know she's wanting to join our family, but how? I can't do the dishes.
Well, I remember, because we've been friends for a long time, and I remember you expressing to me, like, I want to have another baby, but I'm so scared.
I was so scared, because I'm like, if it tore my hips with my last delivery, and it wasn't even the delivery, it was the end of the pregnancy. It was a bunch of random things that all perfect storm made it happen. But I was like, it will happen again. They've already told me. As soon as your body starts releasing those relaxin hormones, my body's just like, my joints are hypermobile, and it was going to tear. The doctors told me it's not a maybe, it's a definitely. So I had this head and heart dilemma where I'm like, what do I do? How can I heal my hips enough to have another baby? Yeah. That was my motivation.
Yeah.
So I finally got prayerful about it, right? My ego, I didn't realize how much pride I had. I'm like, I'm not a proud person. I don't care what I look like. No, I was a proud person. Like, I don't ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
So I finally got to this point where I'm like, okay, heaven, help me. And I'm being prayerful about it. And I had the feeling to ask my neighbor, who wasn't even a close friend of mine. I'm like, no, I'm not asking her. I don't even know her. I'm bawling in my closet on the floor. What is she going to do? Like, how is she going to help me? If the experts, medical doctors, you know, they can't help me.
Right.
Anyway, the feeling kept coming.
Yep.
So finally I walked down to her house and I'm like, hi, I don't know why I'm here, but I feel like you could help me. And I knew she'd gone through fertility issues, which is not the same, but kind of the same. Like, it's a medical issue. I'm like, who did you go to? Like, what did you do to help with that? And she was like, oh, this is the craziest thing. It was energy work. I don't know how she does it, but there's this lady who has kind of a sixth sense, and she's able to sort of help you somehow. She doesn't physically do anything, but just going and talking to her, this friend of mine, this neighbor, was able to have a pregnancy.
So, okay, I want to talk about this for just a second, because do you think it's true that I feel like when you are new to energy work, it can very much feel like people are tapping into weird things, or it's like this, she's got this sixth sense. But don't you think now, on the other side of it, that really anyone can learn these skills for healing? Like, energy work can be done by literally anyone. But when you're new to it and you don't understand how it all works, it just seems like this crazy thing that somebody helped you with.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah, and I mean, it comes back to, we're all gifted in different ways, intuitively, spiritually. So it felt foreign, but I also was like, well, I know that I've had really amazing spiritual experiences.
Totally.
So why not?
Yeah.
Why couldn't it work? But yeah, it can definitely feel scary and out of the box.
Yeah, and just, I mean, I think that's why it's got this whole woo-woo, like, vibe around it. I mean, there's books like Why Woo-Woo Works, which proves, like, the science behind why these things work. And it's all, like, belief-based.
Yeah.
But I think it's funny that it's like, you go and they're just like, I don't know what they do, but this is what they're doing, and it helped me, right?
Yeah.
Which I'm sure the person doing it could explain exactly what they're doing.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Sure. But to the layman, you know, me and my neighbor, we're like, 100%. I don't know what that was, but I know
But it
worked.
helped,
Yeah. So immediately I call this lady, and she's like, yeah, I can see you in March. And it was November. And I was like, oh, I was hoping for Friday. So
March?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
She was booked out.
She was booked out. And so I was like, okay, well, what can we do? And she said, I can give you the number of the woman who I see. Okay. So she goes to someone else for her own personal healing.
Right.
And she gave me that number, and she could get me in on Friday. And I actually called you, Annie. I said, can you watch? Oh, this was actually after I had Lily that this happened, now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I asked you to watch my newborn.
Yeah.
I had Lily. Okay, I'm remembering.
Okay,
more.
all right.
So I...
Rewind,
okay. Guys, rewind. So I had experienced energy healing when I wanted to get pregnant with Lily. I guess, we do have to tell this part of the story.
Yeah,
I totally forgot this part.
Okay, I want to hear it.
Okay, so I went down to, this was for business, purely business. I had to go to this event at UVU, and it was a yoga fest event.
Okay.
Now, I liked yoga for the physical workout.
Right.
I would go occasionally if it was the only class that fit my schedule.
Yeah.
It was not a spiritual thing at all. It just wasn't. Anyway, I'm experiencing all this physical pain in my hips. And we're walking through the hall, and this woman stepped in front of me, and she was like, would you like to pull a card? And I'm like, what is a card? I don't know what this is. It looked like a deck of cards, right? Now I know those were oracle cards. And I pulled one from her deck. She said, use your intuition, grab whichever one is calling to you. And I pulled it out, and it was a mudra, which is a hand posture. I know that now. But it was basically like a picture of two hands, and they were in this specific posture, and it said stability. And then it said hips. Root chakra.
Whoa, that gives me chills.
Yes. And it said, you feel ungrounded. You feel unstable. And it kind of described everything that I was experiencing physically.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes. So anyway, that opened me up, and I was like, that's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Do you think that you pulled that card because you were putting out this energy of like, I'm ready to heal this part of myself?
Yeah.
And so you called it in?
Yeah, completely.
It's like the law of attraction, like you're calling it back in.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway,
and your angels are guiding
and
it,
my
right?
angels 100%
right?
are there. They're helping me out. So what happened was I ended up going to a doctor that helped me with some vein issues that I was having.
That's right.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah. So the energy healing came after the vein surgery. Okay, so this is what happened. I have the surgery and I experienced relief from the pain enough that I could get pregnant.
Okay.
I got pregnant. I was so grateful. I was so careful the whole pregnancy.
Oh,
I
bet.
was like making sure I didn't do anything that could potentially hurt my hips. So I was hyper vigilant in that. And then I delivered her. She was healthy and my pain came back. And I was pissed.
Yeah.
Because I was like, no, I took care of this issue.
I went and got surgery for this issue. I had
surgery for this issue. And I mean, it's a vein issue, which is interesting too, right? Because it has to do with blood. And coming to the energy side of it, I'm like, blood is your life.
Yes.
It's what sustains us.
Yeah.
It's
well, and if it's a family issue too, it's right, like
that's
the
your
blood that's running through your veins.
Right. So I go in for a surgery again. I had a repeat of the same surgery.
I didn't know that.
Yes. And they said, you know, a very small percentage, maybe 5% of people have the surgery once and will ever need it again. Congratulations, you need it again.
Wow.
So they go in there, they killed basically every single vein that led to my uterus, except one.
Wow.
And they were all bad. He said, I chose the least bad vein and kept that one for you so that your organ will stay alive. Otherwise, I would have to do a full hysterectomy.
That's like a really big deal.
Huge.
Wow.
Yeah. So I woke up from the surgery like, okay, this worked last time. It's going to work again. It didn't. I was so frustrated, so depressed. And actually this became like a really emotional, spiritual crisis for me.
Yeah. Well, it's how defeating is that?
Yes. I was like, so defeated. And I was like, what's the point? So I lost all interest in religion and God and connection. And I was like, I felt so abandoned, essentially.
I did not know that.
You didn't?
No, wow.
Yeah. So I was just like overall apathetic about life. I was a new mom.
Numbed out.
Numbed.
Yes.
Yeah, and I wasn't the type of person that wanted to take a medication, but I'm sure I would have really needed one. I would have benefited from some sort of supplemental help. Right. Or any type of medication to help with anxiety, depression, brain health, whatever. But I didn't do anything about it. So that is where I got really desperate. And that's where I was like, okay, medically, I did try everything, including 2 surgeries.
Right.
I got my baby here. Like, I did all of the right things that I'm supposed to be doing, or I'm told I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm falling apart, and I'm 30 years old.
I'm in excruciating pain.
Yeah. So all that pain came back. It was horrible, and I was so sad, so frustrated. So that was when I prayed. That was when I asked my neighbor. That was when I got this woman's number and called you and said, will you babysit my newborn?
Yeah.
I'm going to this weird appointment. And she lives near you. Can I drop off my baby?
I remember.
And you watched her, and I went over there, and again, I was just at like rock bottom. I'm like, nothing else is helping. I have to, I don't know. Yeah. And she was just this sweet older woman. She felt like very nurturing and motherly.
Yeah, had a very feminine energy.
Yes.
Wow.
And you talked about this too. She was a member of my same church, so it felt safe. Yeah. She used my same vocabulary.
Yes, exactly.
And when I think about it now, I have this broader perspective. I'm like, guys, we're all saying the same thing. We're just using different vocabulary.
Absolutely.
And I'm comfortable with that now. But at the time, I needed her to use my vocabulary.
Yes. I so understand.
Yeah. So all she did essentially was sit down and talk to me. She said, what was happening with your health? You know, why are your hips hurting? When did this start? And I go all the way back to my son's birth. Well, it's because of this. She's like, yeah, but what was happening? And I'm telling her medically, this is what happened. And she's like, no, you're not understanding. What was happening emotionally with your relationships, with your family. And she muscle tested, which I didn't know at the time that's what she's doing. She's basically asking yes or no questions to get to an answer.
Yeah.
So does this have to do with family? Yes. Does this have to do with mom? Yes. when did it happen? And she goes through the years, and she says this pain that you're experiencing in your hips has to do with whatever happened with your mom after your son was born.
That's one of those mind-blowing moments, right? Where you're like, how can you know that?
How can you know that?
How can you know that?
And also, how can that be? How can something that happened 6 years ago still be hurting me physically?
Wow.
Because my OB, you know, I call him. I'm like, I'm still hurting. He's like, you roll your ankle playing basketball 5 years ago. You should be able to go play basketball today. So medically, everyone's like, there's no reason why this is still hurting you.
Right.
And yet it was. Because my heart was hurt. And I really feel like our spirits are trying to communicate with us and screaming at us all the time.
Absolutely.
But we experience this world with our 5 senses. So the only way our spirits can really talk to us is physically through our body.
Totally. Yeah. We live in a 3D reality. And I've noticed that some people will get a lot of physical pain because that's what they react to the most. Where other people will, like, I feel like for me, it's my kids saying and doing things that catches my attention more than even my physical pain. I feel like I'm better at ignoring my physical pain. But I have friends like you and other friends that will be like, this thing was hurting me, and that's how I went and figured out what was going on. So it can show up differently for different people, but physical pain is absolutely an indicator that there's something energetically off.
Completely. And you think about even the word disease. You hear this all the time in this energy world. You break it down, dis-ease. It means you're uncomfortable, like there's something off within you. Yes. And it's causing this physical ailment to show up. Yeah, so she sat down with me, she muscle tested, we figured out when. And it didn't really matter why, but we had the power to change it. So we used visualization. And I loved it. It was amazing and simple, so simple. I didn't realize energy healing, energy work could be so easy.
You set the intention and then you visualized it. And it moved.
So in this particular visualization, you know, I'm Christian, I still am, and she incorporated Christ into the visualization. You know, she said, you are carrying this physical pain emotionally from what happened with your mom and her not being there in a way that you needed. And it's manifesting here. You can give it to Christ. Like, you don't need to carry this pain and literally hold on to it and walk around with it all day, every day. And honestly, I didn't feel angry. I didn't know I was holding that pain.
Well, and that's why trapped emotions get trapped, because we're not allowing ourselves to feel them. If you had maybe allowed yourself to be really angry at your mother, you may not have stored it in your body in that way.
And I hadn't thought of that.
And I've heard it explained where certain parts of your body are vulnerable. Like, so your hips were vulnerable. And the parts of our body that are vulnerable, let's say I go running and I hurt my knee. Now my knee is vibrating a little lower than the rest of my body because it's injured. So if I'm having a low vibration emotion and I'm not allowing myself to feel it, it will go find wherever it can resonate in my body. So if you have an injury that you've had for 30 years and you're like, they just can't figure out why, there's probably a lot of trapped emotions in that specific part of your body.
Yeah, it completely makes sense. Yeah, so in this visualization we did, I just closed my eyes. I saw Christ in front of me, and I gave him my pain. And it was ugly and sticky and black. And I pulled it from every inch of my physical body. And I handed it to him, and he smiled, and he was so happy that I was ready. My pride was ready to just ask for some help and get the support, because honestly, that's what his atonement is all about. That's what real love, real charity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what it's for.
Well, you came over to my house afterwards and you were like, I had this cool experience, and you told me about this experience immediately following, or maybe it was another time, I can't remember, but I remember you telling me this, and I had been born and raised Christian, devout, loved my religion, and I had never heard the atonement described that way. I didn't even know how to use it. I didn't even realize that, the atonement is this idea that I give and all of my pain to Christ, not just the quote-unquote bad things that I've done that I need to ask for repentance for, but also the things that I need support in. Wow. And that was totally life-changing for me. Even for you to have that experience changed my life.
I know.
Absolutely.
Isn't that amazing? Absolutely. And I know my experience has changed many lives because I've shared this since, and I've done similar guided meditations for people. And I know it's been amazing for all of us at different places in different ways.
Isn't it beautiful too that you could be coming from this and not be Christian, right? Like you might believe in God, you might believe in source, you might believe in your higher self, you might believe in universe. And it's what you were saying earlier where it's just a different vocabulary.
Yes.
But you can still receive the same type of healing and that same type of energy movement through your visualization of who your higher power is.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you can give your pain physically to light.
Yes.
To just pure white light.
Yes.
Yeah. And have the same beautiful experience. So I was sold on it because the minute I walked out of her room, out of her office, my pain was gone for the first time in 5+ years.
It was immediate,
miraculous. Wow. And I was like, holy shit.
That just happened.
Worked. I couldn't believe it, but it did. And I was like,
well, especially when you've been to every doctor, you've had surgeries, you've done every physical thing that the books are going to tell you to do and that the logical people are going to tell you to do, right? And then you go to this woman's house and you just basically shed this emotional burden and the pain is completely gone.
Yeah. I mean, physically did nothing. Just closed my eyes and
visualized.
Yes. Yeah. And it honestly did. It changed my understanding of the atonement and how to connect with Christ. And also that it's bigger than I ever imagined.
Wow. Yes.
Like it's touch or reachable for anyone of any background, any belief system.
Absolutely.
Healing is healing, and we have the power to heal instantly. And it's amazing. It's literally a miracle. And then I was like, oh, Christ did energy work.
Yes.
When he walked through the streets of Jerusalem and he was touching people and they were healed. Wow. That was energy work.
That gives me chills. Absolutely.
Yeah. And speaking it and making it so is energy work, right? It's that intention.
Yes.
So yeah, I was like, cool, I'm healed. This is amazing. And I went and saw my mom the next weekend and I was like, okay, how's this going to go?
See what happens.
Yes. And I was at her house and the pain came back in my hips, the same dull ache. And I was like, oh my gosh.
But this time you recognized exactly why it was happening.
Yes, right? Yes. And I remembered that this energy healer had told me about a beautiful Hawaiian practice, Ho'oponopono.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything else about it. I just knew that it encompassed 4 elements, essentially. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And thank you.
Yeah.
And, you know, those beautiful words and intentions are also the same as what would encompass the atonement or any other spiritual practice, essentially. Like Buddha, all of it is about love, right? Forgiveness, love. Mm-hmm. So I just knew those 4 words were part of it. And as I was leaving my mom's house, I grabbed her by the shoulders and I just said to her, I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And I think she was probably caught off guard and was like, huh? Is this how we're like saying goodbye now? Well, and typically
Ho'oponopono is not a practice of actually saying that to another person. It's a prayer.
Right.
But you were very new to it.
Yes, I was extremely new. I didn't understand anything about it. I just was grateful that I remembered what it was.
And that's brave, actually. That's really brave because I don't know if I could just straight up say that to somebody. Like, I don't know if I would even dare to say that to my mother if I was in that same situation.
Yeah.
So that's like, that took courage.
It did take courage. The best part, though, with her not knowing anything was she grabbed me by the shoulders and repeated back to me.
Wow.
Everything. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
That gives me chills. Wow.
I know. And that is what sealed the deal. That is what actually healed me. Because from that second on, I haven't had 1 ounce of pain.
Unbelievable.
I know.
Well, and how cool that your mom was so receptive to it and then able to offer it back, because there's so many people who are in experiences like that will never receive that back. Right?
I feel so lucky.
It
worked out the way it did.
Absolutely.
So blessed. And it's blessed both of our lives for sure. And our relationship, you know, it has its ebbs and flows just like any relationship.
Of course, yeah.
But it's so nice to be able to see someone through this lens of like, it's okay. You're doing your best. Yeah. And I'm doing my best. And we just love each other and we're both sorry.
Well, and energy, once you start to understand how energy works too, I felt like it gives me such a greater compassion for other people.
Definitely.
Because when someone's acting in a way now, I'm not just like, that person's being a jerk. I mean, sometimes I do. But when I let my ego go and I get back to that like state of understanding, then I can look and think, what's going on with them energetically? What happened in their childhood? Like, you're just able to know that if we understood everything about other people, we would have nothing but love for other people. Because all of those things, right, their childhood, the generational trauma, emotions, beliefs that get passed down, it's all part of why we are the way that we are.
Yeah. Essentially, it's learning how to encompass empathy.
Yes.
And like that pure love.
Absolutely.
Charity.
Wow, Andrea, thank you for sharing your story with us. You're such a fantastic storyteller.
Oh,
I
thank you.
love listening to you tell your story, and you have such a way of just making it make sense and just you touch my heart, and I've witnessed you touch many other people's hearts. So thank you for sharing your story. That was beautiful. You guys, thank you for listening. You can check us out on Instagram at 108.meditate or on our website 108-meditate.com. Again, thank you so much for listening. I hope this has inspired you to maybe seek out some different healing modalities or energy work, or just learn something new. And as always, happy healing.